Thanks for joining us. I'm Nicole Carey, Director of Broadcast Operations at Vincennes University, as well as the General Manager of Vincennes PBS. I am joined in studio today with a very special guest, Indiana Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch. Thank you so much for stopping by today.
Well, it's great to be here. Always great to be at Vincennes University.
Well, we're glad you're here. And what a year it has been with the ongoing pandemic. We've just wrapped up the legislative session. How do you think the session went amidst different COVID protocols put in place this year?
You know, it started out a very unusual session because of COVID and the social distancing and just the physical arrangement of the House and the Senate. But in the 13 years I've been associated with the General Assembly, 8 as a state representative and now 5 as Lieutenant Governor and President of the Senate, this has probably been the most collaborative and bipartisan session that I've ever witnessed or experienced. I think it's because COVID kind of brought us together, but also we found out about 10 days before the end of session that when our revenue forecast was revised, that we had an additional $2 billion of state revenues we hadn't counted on,
yes,
which just
news.
Speaks to how strong our economy is and how it rebounded after COVID. But in addition, we received $3 billion of the American Recovery Plan money, and we didn't need that money to bail us out.
Right.
We were able to take that money, that additional $5 billion, and we would be able to do some one-time spends in some areas that really can be transformational for Indiana. I think for that reason it was such an incredible session. And what the General Assembly tried to do is how can we invest without growing government?
Right.
And so they didn't put money into operating costs that will continue, but they looked at historic investment in K through 12 education, an additional $1.9 billion, and indicated that 45% of that money was to go towards teacher compensation, starting salaries at $40,000, but also they looked at paying cash for capital projects, which frees up revenues in the future.
Right.
But also they looked at how do we pay down bond debt and how do we pay down pension debt. And by doing that, they were able to also free up revenues in the future. And so much more. There was so much more that was done in this budget, but really a historic, unprecedented budget. And for that reason, I think, and the reason that everyone came together through COVID, it was just a great budget session.
Yes, and speaking of the budget part of this session, that is something that is taken on every other year to create those 2-year budgets. You've mentioned some, but what are some of the key takeaways from the budget this year that you're really proud of?
In addition to the investments that I've already mentioned, I think for me, the $250 million investment in broadband, in expanding broadband throughout Indiana. Purdue University did a study back in 2018, said there were a little over 400,000 Hoosiers that were in internet darkness.
Yes.
And if we could connect them all over the next 20 years, that would result in an additional $12 billion to our economy. So we invested $100 million to expand broadband through Indiana. To date, we have already invested 79 of that $100 million, and that will connect 22,000 Hoosiers in the future. So this additional $250 million is going to go a long way towards getting Hoosiers connected. We saw during COVID that being connected is no longer a luxury. It's essential because workers are teleworking, students are e-learning, and healthcare is being delivered telehealth.
I know the Knox County Broadband Task Force has been meeting and trying to help connect Knox County residents. There's a survey that has just gone live that we need residents in Knox County to take part in. That way we can get a good assessment of what the situation is. What would you say to those residents out there about taking this survey, and how important is it?
Oh, of course you have to take the survey. You have to give your community an idea of where those kind of pockets of need are so that they can devise a plan. And when this grant money, this $250 million, becomes available after July 1, that you're in a position to go after it and get that money awarded here to Knox County. One of the things that the General Assembly did, and there were 18 bills that were introduced on broadband to tell you how much a priority it is for Hoosiers. One of the things that was accomplished is there's going to be a web-based portal that is going to be developed where Hoosiers can actually go in and type in their information and say, I don't have broadband, or I don't have 25.3 speeds. And if there are enough people in an area that say they don't have it, that allows the state to go in and look at taking the initiative and helping out and providing service. So, and that empowers people.
Right, right, absolutely. I know another important issue is mental health, and there's more funds being directed that direction in the state.
Absolutely. The General Assembly put an additional $100 million into mental health for this session. And you know, after this election, Governor Holcomb and I talked about what we wanted to focus on over the next 4 years above and beyond our normal duties and responsibilities. And I told him, for me, I wanted to focus on mental health and addiction. The human cost of this pandemic is huge.
Absolutely.
And it's going to exponentially grow in years to come. Not just the cost to families, but the cost to our budgets, whether we're in the public or the private sector. If you talk to school superintendents or school counselors, they will share with you that the amount of anxiety, panic, you know, self-harm, suicide ideation that they're seeing among our young children, not just middle and high school, but even grade school, is going off the charts. And so these are our future leaders, and we have to be able to provide them with the services that they need to be able to lead us into the future. Before COVID, 1 out of 5 Hoosiers was suffering from mental illness or facing addiction. And there's not a one of us who hasn't been touched by that.
That's right.
And my family is no different. My mother suffered from depression. My sister committed suicide. We all know someone, and we're all affected by this. And certainly we have all experienced some kind of anxiety throughout COVID. So that $100 million, saying that mental health is important, is going to be key to us and to our success as a state moving forward.
That's right. I know in the last year, teachers have really had their work cut out for them in adapting the way they teach when we had to go to e-learning and remote learning across the state during the shutdown. With the additional funds set aside for education in this budget, what kind of message do you think that sends to teachers across our state?
Well, I hope it sends the message that we value you and that we want to support you. And, you know, because when I look back at my childhood, and I'm sure we all can say this, outside of my parents, my teachers had the single most important influence on me. So we want to value that profession. We want to value those teachers. And the fact that we said, we're giving you an additional $1.9 billion, we want 45% of that to go to compensate our teachers. Let's set our salary, our starting salary at $40,000. Hopefully that lets teachers know that we do value them and we are compensating them for that, but also that will help us attract more young people into that profession because we need to ensure that our young people are prepared for the future. The job of being a teacher and the job of educating our young people is far more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic. You know, it's so much more, and they are such an important part of our future that I think that additional $1.9 billion hopefully tells them that, yes, you are important to Indiana, and we value that.
Yes, absolutely. Another important item that came out of the legislative session is the emergency powers bill that limits the governor's emergency power and enables the legislature a little more power in times of emergency. The bill was vetoed by the governor, but then overturned by the legislature. A lawsuit's now been filed to question the constitutionality of that bill. What are the next steps in this issue?
You know, of course, it's in the courts now, so we'll have to wait and see. And it's really interesting. I came from the General Assembly. I mean, I was a state representative, and now I'm in the executive branch as Lieutenant Governor. And, you know, I don't think that the message should be that the governor didn't do a good job. That's not the message at all, because our governor did an incredible job. I think the fact that he was able to have a common sense approach to keeping Hoosiers safe, but also to keeping our economy going. I think he did a tremendous job. And in fact, our revenues rebounding like they did kind of give testament to that. It's more of, we were in a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, and there wasn't a roadmap for it.
That's right.
You know, it was uncharted territory. And so the governor did what the governor had to do. I think what the General Assembly is basically saying is, you know, we hope this never happens in the future. If it does, we need to have a roadmap for it, and maybe we need to have some changes so that the balance of power is always in place. And so it's not, I don't at least view it as something that's adversarial. I think it's more of trying to kind of be clearer about what we all do in the future if something like this would ever happen, and heaven forbid that it ever does.
Well, we sure hope it doesn't, that's
Yes.
for sure. I know I'm not alone in that. And then also I wanted to talk about, just announced this week was the news that Toyota is going to expand its Gibson County plant and add approximately 1,400 new employees to their workforce during a pandemic that is still going. That is fantastic news to hear in our area of the state, for sure.
Absolutely, and with the, you know, with the announcements, with, you know, the recent announcements, that's going to be about 3,000 new jobs here in Indiana over the past 10 days that have been announced. But here's the real news. Last year, in spite of COVID and all the challenges we had, Indiana was able to create an additional 31,000 new job commitments. That's a 5-year high.
Wow.
I think it speaks to how solid our economy is, and as a result of 16 years of conservative fiscal leadership, our economy is in good shape. And so we've rebounded well, and we could take that additional $3 billion of American recovery money, and we didn't have to dig out of a hole like some of our neighbors. We were able to take that solid foundation and then look at how can we improve, how can we fund some areas that maybe we haven't had the additional money, but now we can. And I think what we're going to see here in Indiana is just an explosion of growth with the READY grants, you know, that were put in the budget, $500 million. You know, $500 million, think about that. And it was patterned after the Regional Cities Initiative. In 2016, 3 parts of the state were each given $42 million to transform their communities with projects that actually would attract talent and hold young people here. And those regions were South Bend, Fort Wayne, and Evansville. Now, I'm pretty familiar with Evansville because that's my hometown. And it wasn't just Evansville and Vanderburgh County. It also was Posey, Gibson, and Ward County. They all had projects that would transform that region. But here's the really critical part. The $42 million that the state put into that regional project in Evansville, it has brought in right under $1 billion of private and local money. So think about this. We have $500 million. We're going to probably have 10 regions of the state, each getting $50 million. And each of those regions are going to attract an additional $1 billion of investment. That's $10 billion of projects and construction that are going to be going on in Indiana all at the same time. And Knox County needs to be a part of that. This area, I mean, Knox County needs to be a part of that, and Vincennes needs to be a part of that, because you've got Vincennes University, you know, you have got, you know, where our state started, which is right here. And so I would encourage you, and I would encourage our local leaders and our community leaders to look to your neighbors, figure out how you can form partnerships, and be able to submit an application, because that money's going to go somewhere. Why not here?
Well, and when you look at different institutions like Vincennes University and the partnerships that we have set up with Toyota as an example as they're expanding, how key do you feel like those certain partnerships between education and the workforce go hand in hand?
Oh, it's key. And, you know, so you've got an asset here in this part of the state that not every part of the state has. But not just your partnerships with, you know, Toyota, but Crane. You have some incredibly strong partnerships with Crane. And so I just see you all as being a real contender. And I'm excited about, I hope the whole 500 million comes to Southwest Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
But,
That would be amazing.
but nonetheless, Knox
Right.
County needs to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, that's the end of the questions that I had for you. Anything else that we didn't cover that you'd like to talk about?
Do you know, the only other thing is to just touch upon some other big ticket items that were in this budget. 900 million for future infrastructure projects, 60 million for small business assistance, 160 million for water, infrastructure projects. I know I'm missing so much, 60 million for trails. I mean, it truly was and is a transformational budget that is really going to set Hoosiers up for success in the future. And I can't thank the General Assembly enough and Governor Holcomb for what they've done to be able to provide the leadership that will lead Hoosiers into the future.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you stopping by our studio today.
It's always good to be with PBS.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.